Welcome to the Lawyerist Podcast, a series of conversations about law practice. Each week, we talk with legal entrepreneurs and innovators about building a successful law practice in today's challenging and constantly changing legal market. And now, here are your hosts.
Hi, I'm Sam Glover.
And I'm Aaron Street, and this is episode 242 of the Lawyerist Podcast, part of the Legal Talk Network. Today we're talking with Reshma Saujani, the founder of Girls Who Code and the author of Brave Not Perfect, about the importance of reframing the messages society delivers to girls and women.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Text Expander, Ruby Receptionist, Podium, and Alert Communications. We wouldn't be able to do this show without their support. Stay tuned. We'll tell you more about them later on.
So last week, as I hope you all know, we launched our new...
they have to know by now.
Well, maybe they're just tuning into just this episode because they're curious about the topic.
Fair enough. Yeah.
I hope you know, though, that last week we launched our new book, The Small Firm Roadmap, and thanks to all of you, it hit #1 in Amazon for the best-selling law practice book, and so we greatly appreciate all of your support. Thank you, thank you. If you haven't bought it yet, please do. We want to get it out in the world. If you have and you've started to read it or finished it, we would love it if you would give us a review in Amazon so more people can find it.
Yeah, those reviews really help. Thank you very much to those of you who've gotten them. And honestly, if you go to Amazon and you're not sure about buying the book, now there's a bunch of reviews there that should help you make up your mind, and very persuasively because they're all 5 stars so far. So keep it up. Now we've got a brief sponsored conversation with Tom Ball from Alert Communications, and then my conversation with Reshma.
Hi, my name is Tom Ball. I work with Alert Communications. Alert Communications offers virtual receptionist, call, intake, and retainer services for law firms only.
Hi, Tom. Welcome back to the podcast. On episode 221, I think it was, we talked about the beginning of how a virtual receptionist can work with a law firm and enhance their offerings by helping with intake, follow-up, and tracking metrics. But I want to talk about that other thing that you just mentioned, retainer services. So tell us about that. What is that, and how does that work with when you're working with lawyers?
The way that works, basically, it's more of an advanced service we have. But when the marketing calls or the leads come in and we're actually taking those calls, we go through a qualifying intake script. And what we do is we actually work with customizing that intake script and screening call with a law firm to dial that in. And then if anybody gets through that intake script and they actually qualify to be a client for the law firm, at that point, we've actually embedded the retainer from the law firm into our system. And that goes out by text and email with the person still on the call. And then what happens basically, and also goes out by email, the whole goal is there for conversion to keep them on the call, explain the retainer to them, and then have them e-sign that.
Yeah.
Now that goes out unsigned by the law firm. That way, the next day, when the law firm calls back the client, if they find something out that they want to not take the case, they can actually do it at that point. But when you basically have a signed retainer, then what happens basically is that generally that client is never shopping you till they talk to the law firm the next day. And we do that basically for personal injury law firms because they have contingency fee agreements. We do that for their mass torts. We also do that for class actions. And then we offer sending additional documents as well out. So for other types of services or law firms, whatever they may be, we may want to be able to send out questionnaires to prep the client best when they talk to the law firm. And we can also set appointments in the calendars to actually sync that all up.
Yeah, I can imagine how this works is the potential client calls, you ask your qualifying questions that you've worked with the lawyer to sculpt those questions. And once they qualify, you send them a retainer. I assume you're probably also scheduling the follow-up appointment in cases like those, huh?
Yeah, generally we are. Not always, though, but generally we are. We're setting the appointments up more for personal injury and less for mass tort and class action, usually because of the volume of those calls coming through. The law firm themselves actually will follow up at a certain time. And generally in the package, the contingent fee agreement goes out, the retainer from the law firm goes out with usually a welcome letter telling them what's going to happen next.
Right.
And then it also goes out with either HIPAA or high-tech forms to go out for the medical documents as well. That all goes in one package to be signed all at once in the very first call.
And I imagine if it were, rather than a personal injury or a mass tort or a class action case, if it were, say, a family lawyer, the call might look a little bit different. You'd probably still have qualifying questions, but the ultimate decision is going to be up to the attorney whether or not to take the case. So instead of sending out a retainer, you may be scheduling the follow-up appointment with the attorney and probably sending out some preparatory documents like here's what to expect, here's the information to bring, that kind of stuff.
Yes. Family, estate, bankruptcy, criminal law. Basically, it's more sensitive on the front end, I think, on whether they're going to even take the case at all. They want to talk to them and do a deeper dive usually. And in those situations, what we could do though is like you're talking about, send an additional doc, even a questionnaire form, get that out to them on the very first call. And then at that point, set an appointment and let them know what to expect coming back to them.
Gotcha.
And the other situation we could do in those as well is do a warm transfer to the law firm, where after we do the initial screening, it goes then to them after they make the initial qualification, then go to the law firm to make sure they're getting even a higher quality lead coming to them directly.
Very cool. You've got quite a lot of free resources on your website, and our listeners can find them by going to alertcommunications.com/lawyeristpodcast. If you go there, you'll find free resources and ebooks, like an ebook on retaining more clients through technology and one on how to convert mass tort leads into clients. There's a bunch of stuff there too that you can check out besides those things, but check it out at alertcommunications.com/lawyeristpodcast. Tom, thanks so much for coming back.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Reshma Saujani. I am the CEO and founder of Girls Who Code, which is a movement to close the gender gap in computer science and technology. And I am the author of the international bestseller, Brave, Not Perfect. We've kind of launched internationally this year in the UK, Canada, and in India. So we're really building this movement.
Reshma, thanks so much for being on the podcast today. I mean, that sounds amazing. That's huge. Great job.
Thank you.
Tell me how you wound up here. You've done a TED Talk, which is very compelling and interesting if people want to go there next. But I'd like to kind of have you give us the short version of that backstory, how you wound up founding Girls Who Code and thinking about the concepts that you talk about in Brave, Not Perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I found myself at age 33 kind of in a job I hated. I had gone to law school, grad school, graduated with $300,000 in student loan debt, kind of naively thought that I would work for the man for a year or two. And then I'd take off my golden handcuffs and do what I really wanted to do, which was change the world. When I go back and I read my...
Not even a little bit ambitious. That's awesome.
Right. But, I don't know if you ever do this, but I go back sometimes and I just read my law school essay of why I wanted to be a lawyer. And it was always about social justice. And I think sometimes as lawyers, we then find ourselves in a job that is exactly opposite to why we wanted to get into the profession. And, I naively thought that I would work at Davis Polk for a year or two, and then I would go do what I really wanted to do. And I found myself kind of 10 years later working as a lawyer in finance and just miserable, right? In this life I hated, in this job I didn't want. And I remember one day my best friend called me. And it's funny how your best friend always calls when your life is falling apart. And
that's what they're for.
I go into this windowless conference room and I just start crying. And she, through my tears, I hear her say, "Just quit." And I was she didn't say anything profound. It was kind of in many ways the obvious thing. But for some reason at that moment, I was yes, I can quit. And I did. And I decided to go for it. And I ran for United States Congress.
Was that in the back of your mind at the time? If I quit, this is the thing I want to do? Or did you have to figure that out next?
No, I knew I always wanted to run for office. Ever since I worked on my first campaign when I was 18. I am a political junkie. I love politics. Even as I was working as a lawyer, my side hustle was working on campaigns and organizing. And so I had the bug.
Yeah.
So I decided to run for Congress. And it's funny, I did this in 2010. So I was Ocasio before Ocasio, except, she won and I actually lost miserably. But, I decided to run in this kind of Democratic primary against an 18-year incumbent. And back then it was you didn't do that. No one did that. That was just insane. But, I naively thought that I could shake every hand, meet every voter, and I would win. And so
you weren't the only one who thought that. There was buzz around your campaign. People were this is an up and comer and she might be the next thing. And
yeah. And then on election day, got shellackled, right? 19% of the vote, wasn't even close. And when my big kind of epiphany the next morning, I'm like in this hotel room with like this victory party that never ended up happening. My organizers had had decorated the entire room with Post-it notes, right? I mean, all these young kids, 18 to 24, like we thought we were going to win. And I remember just going back to like my apartment in the Lower East Side and just like, just crawling in the bed and like putting the covers on top of me. But I remember thinking, wow, like I'm devastated, but I'm not broken. Like I'm not broken. And that shocked me because I think I thought for so long in my life that like if I tried something and it didn't work out, that it would literally break me. And it's why I just didn't take a lot of risks in life. I kind of did the safe thing, the thing that was like went to the right schools, worked at the right places. I didn't really rock the boat. And I realized that in failing to rock the boat, I had stuck myself in a career I didn't want, or nor was I passionate about, nor was I what, was going to be my destiny.
Yeah. I mean, so how long did you think about what to do next?
I took about a couple of months and I said, well, one, I took a couple of months just to like drink a lot of margaritas and like replay the election over and over and over again, And then I kind of said to myself, okay, I'm going to move on. I'm done. Because that's the thing I think about failure. It's like you only let it break you, right? And that often is by thinking about it too much, like letting it play out over and over and over again, that you can't move on. And so I knew that I needed to move on in order to not just heal, but to get on to the next stage of my life. And I kind of sat there and I thought, look, out of all the things that I saw on the campaign trail, what resonated with me? And when I ran, I would go to a lot of schools, and I remember seeing like a ton of computer labs full of boys learning the code, not a girl in sight. And I didn't get it, right? Like I knew that Silicon Valley was a boys club, but I did not think that club started in high school. And because I wasn't a computer scientist, because I had not gone through being a woman in engineering or a woman in CS, I just didn't know any better, right? And I said, hey, maybe that's something I can make a difference about. And took like 2 years really talking to a bunch of people, researching, writing, thinking about all things women in tech, and said, all right, if I was going to come up with an intervention, what could that intervention be? And that's how I came up with Girls Who Code.
Very cool. And I guess people who don't code maybe don't get that as much, but in reading your book and listening to you speak, it was obvious to me like code is hard and you are never perfect. And so it sort of forces you to get out of that framework of I have to be an expert before I can tackle this problem. The problems there are a ton of different ways to solve them. It requires resilience because you missed a semicolon or something. Like it's actually a pretty good example of this, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally right. And there are a few things like that in life, right? Where we have these kind of preconceived notions about whether we can or cannot do them, right? And that is definitely, people think coding, oh my God, I got to be a super genius. There's no way I'll be able to do that. My mind isn't wired that way. And so the powerful thing about learning how to code, it's a metaphor for bravery, because you're like, wow, I did it. I made this, I made the robot dance. I made the sprite move. Like I built a website and I never thought I could do it. Wow. Maybe there are other things that like I've told myself I can't do, or I'm not smart enough to do. And maybe I can do those things too. And so again, it's like a metaphor for bravery. And I think it opens up so much of life for so many people.
One of the things that struck me I think it was in your talk, not in your book, but you explained that a statistic where, men will apply for a job if they meet some percentage of the qualifications. I can't remember if it's like 30 or 60, but it's
60%.
Yeah. Okay. Whereas most women won't even think about applying unless they meet 100% of the qualifications, which is sort of the metaphor that Brave Not Perfect is all about, right?
Yeah.
Diving in versus being an expert before you start.
Well, right. And it's almost like what would the world look like if women actually didn't wait to be perfectly qualified to try things? And I think it's about this idea of how perfectionism really holds us back in so many ways. I mean, I can't tell you in this, during my tour for my book, how many people I talked to who said, I remember I was in London and I was talking to this woman who ran technology for a major company. And she said, I just got a promotion and I have an opportunity to basically kind of figure out who should sit in my seat now. And there's a woman and a man, and I think the woman would be incredible. And so I go up to her and I say, you will be great for this job. I will help you. I will hold your hand. I will walk you through the process. The woman says, you know what? Give me a bit to think about it. Right. And comes back and kind of tells her all the reasons why she's not ready to do that job. She said, if I offered it to the man before I even got the words out, he would have been like, great, sign me up.
Right.
And so you see this kind of play out a lot, right? Where women feel like, and I see this play out at Girls Who Code with my team, like we often think we are not ready for that thing unless we know it. We know how to do it, how to execute it, and we're completely prepared. And it's that sense of being over prepared, I think, in many ways that holds us back.
So you definitely get to this in the book, but I think it's worth highlighting now that you're not making the complaint that there is something wrong with women.
No.
This is more about how the world is framed and the world has framed being a woman for women. The answer is not just, we'll get better and overcome this, women, that's your job.
Yeah.
So what's going on here? What's the bigger societal thing that's happening that gets us to this place?
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. Listen, we have to continue to fight racism and sexism.
Absolutely.
But we have to give women and girls strategies to thrive in the culture as it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like my big revelation. And here's the thing, like we socialize our girls to be perfect. And it starts, I have a 4-year-old son, and so I feel like I'm like living and seeing this. And it starts at the playground, right? You'll watch. I was just at the playground with him on Sunday, and I just kept seeing this play out. It's like we tell our girls, be careful, honey.
Mm-hmm.
Don't swing too high. Is your dress dirty? Come over here. Let me clean you up. But we tell our boys, climb to the top of the monkey bars and just jump head first. And so all that coddling, all that protection, often in the name of protecting them from physical harm and then emotional harm, it causes girls to get addicted to perfection and they start giving up before they even try. And, the way that we raise our boys and girls, it's not intentional.
Right.
It's literally second nature. It's the way we've been raised. It's the way we're raising our kids.
And you point out, it's not just about the way we raise our kids. It's also about how people because I start reading your book and I'm immediately going oh my God, I'm a terrible parent. I have 2 girls.
Yeah.
I can see myself doing these things. I suck. And fortunately, you've also said, well, there's more to it than that. So make us feel better.
Yeah, no, it's not. I mean, the thing is, it's again, like I said, it's the way we've been raised, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we're it's just like generation after generation after generation after generation. And we're not doing it to harm our kids, right? It's literally second nature. Like my husband and I talk about this in the book, like we got in a fight about a nightlight because my son, Sean, wanted a nightlight. And my husband is a feminist with a capital F, right? And we're talking about like my house. And, I take Sean upstairs, I plug in the nightlight, I go to sleep. I hear my husband come up 2 minutes later. He takes out the nightlight. Sean screams. Finally, I'm like, no, what's your problem? And he's like, we got to toughen him up. And I'm like, if Sean were a girl, would you let him have the nightlight? And he's like, you're right.
Yeah.
So it's so unconscious, right? And it's these little things, right? It's like these little things that kind of add up. And again, it's not just parents, it's society, it's culture, it's schools, it's what you watch on television, it's everything. And so you have this kind of battle against society that you have to shift and change. And look, I'm not saying that boys should be like girls.
Or that girls should be that was my wife's first reaction.
Or that girls should be like boys.
We were I got all excited after reading the first couple chapters, and I start telling my wife, who's also a lawyer and a very strong woman, about the book. And her first reaction is what? She thinks that we just need to teach girls to be boys. That doesn't seem right. Which I know is not, and you even address that later in the book, but maybe we should say a thing about that too. It's more of a meeting in the middle-ish thing, maybe?
It's letting them be who they are.
Yeah.
Like my son is cautious and careful. He's like a little Gandhi, but everybody tries to man him up. And I'm just like, you know what? Let him be. If he doesn't want to jump off a ledge, don't make him, right? Like if he's scared, it's okay. And so I think the thing is what we like, it's funny, I was like at the beach last summer, I remember, and there's like little boy and little girl sitting there. And the little boy starts taking off his pants and he starts running to the beach naked. And the little girl starts taking off her dress. Her mom immediately is like, no. Right. And so I think that there are a lot of times where our girls want to behave a certain way and we slap them down. And part of it is, again, we sometimes think that, is it a reflection on us? Is it because we want society to be a certain way? But I just think that we just got to let our kids be and do what they want to do and not push them towards gender norms.
So we need to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. And when we come back, we'll start talking about how we can reduce the messages our kids and our colleagues and our friends and people in the world receive about perfection, and how we can help women and girls overcome those messages when they've already received them. So we'll be right back. Drip, drip, drip. Hear that? It's your office's online reviews. Kind of slow, huh? Not exactly the gush of praise you were hoping for when you set up your account on that review site. But why? After all, your best clients love you. They say it all the time, just not online. And that's too bad. Because your word may be your bond, but your clients' words, well, they're your best sales tool. And these days, a star rating can make the difference between very interested and running for the hills. Podium knows how important reviews are to your law office. That's why they built a great online review platform, making it simpler than ever to get a 5-star rating you know you deserve. Businesses see an average 6% increase in revenue from reviews thanks to Podium. More than just a friendly reminder, Podium sends clients straight to the review sites you care about most, with built-in analytics to monitor your progress towards meeting your next goal. So you could keep waiting for reviews to drip in, or you could open the floodgates with Podium. Just visit podium.com/lawyerist to save 10% when you sign up. That's podium.com/lawyerist to get started and save 10%. Podium, become the #1 law office online. Unlock your productivity with Text Expander. Easily insert text snippets in any application from a library of content created by you and your team while reducing errors. You can save so much time, it's like getting an extra employee. Text Expander is available for Mac, Windows, iPhone, and iPad, and Chrome. Show listeners get 20% off their first year. Visit textexpander.com/podcast to learn more about Text Expander. There's more to answering a phone call than just pronouncing your name correctly. And I think that's what sets Ruby apart from all the other receptionist services out there. I've been lucky enough to meet a lot of people who work at Ruby, and from top to bottom, it's full of the kind of people you'd love to spend time with. I guess it's something in the coffee they serve. And after all, when someone calls your firm, that means they are going to be spending time with your receptionist. You may think you get to make a first impression when you pick up the phone, but that's not how it works. Maybe your receptionist is just on the call for a minute or two, but that's all it takes to form a first impression. So it's a good idea to make sure your receptionist is the kind of person you'd want your callers to spend time with. It could be the difference between a big case and a big fail. Don't worry, Ruby can handle pronouncing your name right. They'll also help you make a great first impression. And now Ruby can even help you connect with clients right on your website with 24/7 live online chat. You can find out more about Ruby receptionists and how to make a great first impression at callruby.com/lawyeristpod. Okay, we're back. And so, Reshma, how, as men who want to be allies, as women who want to be good to other women, to other people, how can we reduce the messages that our kids, our girls receive about perfection, and our colleagues and coworkers and just everyone in the world? How can we reduce that?
Yeah. So it's so funny. Like often women will tell me, "Oh, I got your book for my daughter." I'm like, no, you read it. You read it. Because the thing is that it's never too late, right? Like I really learned how to be brave, not perfect when I was in my mid-30s, and it's completely changed my life. And, in this moment where we're so obsessed with wellness, we need to focus also on our minds. And so in the book, there's a lot of strategies about, and I'm in the process of doing a 6-week challenge on Instagram about how can you learn how to be brave?
Mm-hmm.
And so like some tactics, like, get rest. Like every woman I know, I'm sure your wife, we're exhausted.
Yeah.
Like exhausted. And you can't be brave if you're tired. And I don't know how this happened, but like we all postpone our doctor's appointments. Like where did it become too selfish to take care of yourself? And so we have to give women permission to just rest.
Yeah.
And the second thing I know it's going to be hard for you to grapple as a lawyer, but like we have to practice imperfection. And one of the tactics that I give about this is, send an email with a typo in it. And like lawyers especially be like, what? You want me to what?
I could maybe get to using an N- instead of an M-. I could probably do that once.
But we spend so much time, right? Like obsessing and writing and rewriting and rewriting and rewriting our emails. And there's so many things in life that we kind of take that approach about. And so practice being imperfect for the reason that you will see that the world won't fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's okay to not do everything perfectly.
I really liked your sort of cue to just add yet to the end of your sentences, especially when talking about things you're not good at.
Like I had that moment this morning. I've been trying to learn how to surf, and I just had like an awful lesson today. It's like my 7th time. I'm not getting better. I feel like I'm getting worse. And my mind immediately went to like, you suck. Like you're never going to be able to do this. You're never going to be able to do this, And I had to like, that's right. I'm not good yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not going to be able to do it yet. And I think it's really like, that's a really, really, really helpful tool. And I've also, to your second point about men, I 40% of girls who codes teachers are men.
Mm.
I have never felt like so good about the place we're in as women right now, because I think that we have never had so many more men in our sisterhood that we do right now. Like, there are dads who are like, you know what? I'm not going to put up with a world where my daughter can't be everything she can be. And so tell me, what do you need me to do?
Yeah.
Like, what's my role? And I've been thinking a lot about, well, what does brave, not perfect mean for men? And 2 years ago, I went and visited the Rochester Institute of Technology. And RIT is like a leader in computer science education. And the school had gone from like 20% computer science to like, almost 30% in like a handful of years. And so I was like, God, what have they been doing? And I went and I spoke to the women in computing group. And as I was talking to them, there were like 3 or 4 guys sitting there. And afterwards, I'm like, who are you? And they're like, we're the men who support the women in computing group. They had formed a club inside a club. And as I talked to them, they're like, you know what? We do have it harder than the women. And so we're going to take it upon ourselves to speak out when there's a microaggression in class. We're going to offer internship advice and homework advice. Like, we recognize our privilege. And that to me is like the new movement for men right now, is really to be an ally means sometimes you're the one who should speak up, right? When a microaggression is made or a sexist comment is made, and don't always put it on us. Sometimes it means you shouldn't speak at all. Men speak 20% more than women in meetings. And here's the thing, like, you can't be brave if you can't get a word in.
Right.
I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but like, it's all the time. If you're in a room and it's Q&A time, the first 10 hands that are shot up will probably be men.
Oh, I notice that whenever I speak and I pose a question to the room, it's almost always a man who speaks first, second, and third.
Yep.
And if I haven't spoken up by then, I've started actually just saying, look, the first person to talk is not allowed to be a dude.
Yep. And it's not that we don't have questions. It's just, what's happening is we're perfecting the question. We're writing it down. We're thinking about it. We're like, is that stupid? Should I say it? And it's like, no, we have to unlearn that. And I think men have to recognize that that's what's happening. And I don't think they totally do. And so it's a little bit of re-education on them too, to like give it a minute.
Well, and because I think part of it is like, I want to help, and my helping is going to be telling you all about the things that I want to do to help. And, and it just results in more talking instead of listening and being quiet and letting women take the lead.
And I get it. Like, I'm a talker. I'm always working on my listening skills. And so like, you have to practice, right? And you have to be conscious that that's like, that is your norm for you. And I think that's the norm for men. And it's funny because I think a lot of men then walk out thinking that we have nothing to contribute. And like, why are we in the room? And we're only there because we're affirmative action, whatever it might be. And like, they're not recognizing that this is a whole process of socialization. We've been taught to be quiet.
I kind of interrupted you while you were talking about the things that we can do to change that. And if it isn't the last thing, feel free to go back and cover some of the other things that you think people can do. But I wanted to make sure we got to the ledge.
Yeah. I mean, so I think that like every person out there has there's like their secret dream, or like the thing that they want to do, the thing that they're afraid of. Right. And so for me, like, my ledge is definitely running for office. And oftentimes, even now, people are in this moment, everyone's like, are you going to run? Are you going to run? Are you going to run? And I'm like, no, I'm not going to run. I'm really happy about what I'm doing right now, which is true. Like, I feel like I'm really making a difference. I'm a little turned off in politics. But then I have to ask myself, like, is that my drama talking? Right. Or is that like my wisdom talking? And I talk about that in the book. And so I always say to people, find out what your ledge is. Find out what the thing that, like, if you didn't do, you might have regrets about. And just take one step. Just take one tiny little step.
And then once you get out there, just see where you are and see if you can feel more comfortable about it.
Yeah. I mean, I built a movement to teach girls to code, and I don't code. I was not a nonprofit leader, right? I had a JD. And part of how I built Girls Who Code, I took too many steps. And I was like, I'm not a quitter. So then I just had to try it. But I didn't start Girls Who Code by being like, I'm going to build a global movement. I start Girls Who Code by being like, I'm going to take 20 girls and teach them how to code and see what happens. So I think sometimes we think too big right? In the initial process, and that scares us off. So how do you make it so that it's not so intimidating, it's not so daunting that you talk yourself out of it?
Yeah. And that's baby steps. Yeah. Right.
Yep.
Okay. Earlier, you said you're in the middle of an Instagram experiment, and you talked about social media in your TED Talk, I think, maybe even in your book. I think you made the point that social media really feeds this idea of perfection. And I read Cal Newport's deep work soon before I read Brave Not Perfect, and he has all kinds of arguments about why you should ditch social media, and they were all kind of interesting. But after I read Brave Not Perfect, I was like, yep, I'm deleting everything. So what is it about social media that feeds these kind of toxic narratives?
Well, I think it supports us living an inauthentic life where we care too much about what other people think.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I'm going to post the picture that I think that people is the most attractive. So people like it. And then I'm going to check my Instagram every day to make sure that people really liked it. And if I didn't get enough likes, I'm going to feel really shitty about myself. And, it's this, or, we kind of, it feels as though, why is her life seem so amazing and mine seems so shitty?
Yeah.
Right. And in social media, it doesn't allow us to talk about our miscarriages and talk about our divorces and talk about when we get fired and talk about, we call it like negativity shaming on social media if you do that. So I've been kind of flipping it on its head, and I do this thing on Fridays called Failure Fridays, where I share my failures, and I'm encouraging other people. It's really kind of caught on, and people have started doing it too, because I think the thing is that we have to share our real lives, because if we don't, it's exacerbating the anxiety and like the mental trauma. I mean, the amount of college students who are, especially women, that are on medication is enormous. And I think you cannot, like, the role of technology, in this is huge.
So your approach has not been mine of just like, screw it, I'm going to be out for a while because I'm persuaded this is bad. Yours is to try and turn it around, which is probably way more realistic. And so what are some tips that you have for people who want to turn around the way they use social media?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think tell the truth, right? Share your vulnerabilities. I think the second thing is take some time away from it. So for my challenge, this past week, I basically turn my phone off on Sunday. Like, I definitely have an addiction problem to my phone. I'm like constantly on it. And even when I was on vacation last week, I didn't check my phone all the time. So like Sunday, my husband took it away from me and I had the most amazing day.
Yeah.
Like, I went with my son to the park and I actually played with him, not just kind of waved to him while I was reading the New York Times. I, went to a play with my girlfriends and I was like in it, not like checking my phone during intermission. I was present. I was sitting in a cab and I noticed bakeries that I want to go to, or a restaurant that I didn't miss, or a piece of street art that I hadn't seen before, even though I've drove down that street 1,000 times. And so I realized how not centered, like how much I'm not present because of my phone. I've been trying a little thing, like every morning, instead of grabbing my phone right away, I brush my teeth, I put my contacts on, and if I'm really doing well, I'll go walk my dog, and then I'll look at it.
And the world has never fallen apart from doing that, I'm sure. Yeah. My girls and I have an agreement where, because I know, you look at your phone and you sort of tunnel into that world, it's like, and so then when your kid asks you a question, it's like you're in the deep end of a swimming pool and you can just hear the wah, wah, wah from above the water or something. And so like, that's how I interpret not being present. And I feel that, and it feels different when I actually look up and pay attention. And so I've told my girls, look, I'm going to try and do better at this. But if I'm not, just say, Daddy, can I have your attention?
Yeah.
Because then if I don't look up at that moment, I'm an asshole and I feel like one. And so I told him it's not your fault or anything that if I'm looking down, but like sometimes I need you to pull me out of it. And so just say, Daddy, can I have your attention? And that always gets me up, because otherwise I just feel like such a jerk.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's really true. I mean, how much technology has also made it impossible for us to just focus on the task at hand. And we have to, you can just walk by any restaurant and you'll see people eating, but really, and being on their phones at the same time, and almost naturally having a conversation while they're looking on their phones. It's bizarre, but like totally accepted.
Yeah, for sure. Reshma, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you so much. I loved chatting with you.
We will obviously include links in the show notes to Girls Who Code and Brave Not Perfect, and we'll throw your Instagram up there so people can follow along with your experiments.
Thank you. It was great talking to you. Talk soon.
Are you interested in implementing the ideas you've heard on today's podcast into your law firm? Could you use a little help? Hey guys, it's Stephanie, the VP of Community Success here at Lawyerist, and I'd love to help you tackle your business or take it to the next level. Head over to go.lawyerist.com/start to sign up for a quick call with me, and let's talk about how Lawyerist can help you create your best law firm.
Make sure to catch next week's episode of the Lawyerist podcast by subscribing to the show in your favorite podcast app. And please leave a rating to help other people find our show. You can find the notes for today's episode on lawyerist.com/podcast.
The Lawyerist podcast is produced with help from Lindsay Calhoun and edited by Paul Fisher. The views expressed by the participants are their own and are not endorsed by Legal Talk Network. Nothing said in this podcast is legal advice for you.